Thank God for you all being out tonight, this morning, this afternoon. You know, in the Bible, sometimes Christians are referred to as eagles. And you have to know the nature of an eagle and why we're sometimes referred to as that. An eagle is a bird that it doesn't take much effort to fly. It mostly, when you see it, it's just got outstretched wings and it's letting the wind carry it. And when an eagle comes into a confrontation, it could probably whoop any bird that's flying. Any bird that's in the air, it could probably whip. But instead of getting itself entangled in a battle with another bird, what it will do is fly high. And because an eagle, it has the ability to breathe in thin air. And so what it does, it'll go straight up into the air, and the other bird that's trying to fight with it will try to follow that eagle. But the other birds can't handle that thin air like that eagle can. And so what that eagle does is he chooses to fly high and get as close to God as he can, because he knows those other birds ain't going to be able to follow. And so this is why we are compared to eagles sometimes. Sometimes it's better not to get into the squabbles and things. It's just better to get close to God, and because unsaved people ain't going to go into the light. They're not going to, we want to get close to the light. It's kind of like a hunter and let's say he might be hunting squirrels, he might have a squirrel dog. Well, that dog, most of the time, they're real faithful to their master. And they'll jump on a bear for their hunt, for their master. But but if you come across a skunk, it knows it can whip that skunk, but it also know it better not try. Because before that battle is over with, he gonna be smelling like that skunk. And so this is how we have to treat our situations, whether it's on the job or whatever the case may be. We know we know who we are in the Lord, and we know those things, but it's better just to let the Lord fight your battle for you. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to the 4th chapter of 2 Timothy. Fourth chapter of 2 Timothy. We'll start reading at the first verse. And it reads, I charge thee, therefore, before God and the Lord Jesus Christ, who shall judge the quick, that means the living and the dead, at his appearing and his kingdom. Preach the word. Be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and doctrine. Now here, Paul is writing this letter to Timothy. Timothy is his son in the gospel. And he's giving him instructions. The 2 epistles to Timothy and the epistle to Titus are what you call pastoral epistles. They're mostly to preachers. There are instructions for the rest of the body, but most of these 3 epistles are mainly to preachers. So verse 2, we read that again. It says, preach the word. Be instant in season, out of season. Reprove, rebuke, exhort with all longsuffering and doctrine. For the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but after their own lusts shall they heap to themselves teachers, having itching ears. And they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. This morning I want to talk to you about the danger of having itching ears. Paul is telling Timothy, be instant, in season, out of season. In other words, be ready to preach the gospel at all times, regardless of where you are. The Lord might, you might be coming out of Walmart or something, and you might come across somebody, and the Lord might speak to you, and tell you to talk to that person, you know, because we don't ever know, that might be that person's last time to be able to hear the gospel. And so Paul is telling Timothy to be instant, in season and out of season. In other words, when you're in church, when you are in an environment to do it, and when you're out of the environment to do it, regardless of what time of night it is or where you are, be ready to share the gospel with people. That is the ministry that Jesus Christ had. He just didn't preach in the synagogues. He preached wherever he went, wherever he found a soul that could be saved or lost, he was preaching the gospel. He's telling them you have to be this way. In verse 3 it says, for the time will come where they will not endure sound doctrine. And that time has come already. People don't endure sound doctrine. They don't want it. But after their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers. Now what is this talking about? After their own lust shall they heap to themselves teachers. Well, we got several churches here in DeRidder. In fact, we're supposed to be in a Guinness World Book of Records for having the most churches per capita. That means for the amount of people that live in this small town, compared to other cities, we have the most churches per person. We're in the Guinness World Book of Records for that. Well, what has happened? It is because people have heaped to themselves teachers. That word heap means it's kind of like a rug. If you cut this rug in half and you stack, you heap it on a little part on top of another. In other words, it's not room there. They've heaped to themselves teachers. We got a teacher on every corner just about in DeRidder, because people want to believe what they want to believe. They don't care nothing about the truth. They want to hear what they want to hear. So what they do is they start them a little organization. They get them a little pastor. As soon as that pastor say something off the wall to them, they voting him out and bringing somebody else in. Paul says, after their own lust. This is what causes them to heap to themselves teachers. Not just because of that, but because of their own lust. Let's go. Well, let's keep reading here. Verse 4 says, and they shall turn away their ears from the truth, and shall be turned unto fables. So people don't want to hear the truth anymore. They want to hear what they want to hear. And you know, the sad thing is, the only way you can grow is by the truth. If somebody telling you lies all the time, you ain't gonna never grow. If they patting you on the back and telling you okay, brother, the Lord know you got shortcomings, He understand, you ain't gonna never grow. So that's what we have. That's why we have a church full of carnal Christians and people that are unconverted. And what these preachers is doing is taking the word of God and preaching it in a way so that it'll satisfy the unconverted people. They're trying to make it fit their lifestyle. Let's go. Let's go to 2 Chronicles, the 18th chapter of 2 Chronicles. Now while you're turning, I'll be setting this up for you. There are two kings. At this time, the people of God, in other words, the children of Israel, have been divided into two people. There was the king of Judah, the king of Israel. Jehoshaphat was the king of Judah. Ahab was the king of Israel. God caused that to happen because of Solomon's sin. Because Solomon married 700 wives and 300 concubines, and they turned his heart away from the Lord. So God told Solomon, because of your father, I'm going to keep, your seed on the throne. But I'm also take the kingdom, 10 parts of it from you and give it to your servant. And so God did this. Now, Jehoshaphat was a man that wanted to serve God. And he served God. Him and his daddy, King Asa, they both tore down the altars of Baal, and they tried to straighten Israel out. They tried to straighten the kingdom out. And but both of them had the same fault. That fault was they were always making unholy alliances. God wanted that kingdom to stay away from the other kingdom. He didn't want them to be intermingling. You see? And so here Jehoshaphat, he feels like, well, we can just all get along. Let's just all get along. We'll start reading at verse 1. It says, now Jehoshaphat had riches and honor in abundance, and joined affinity with Ahab. Now Jehoshaphat was blessed by God. He did what God said do, and so God blessed him. Verse 2 says, and after certain years he went down to Ahab to Samaria, and Ahab killed sheep and oxen for him in abundance, and for the people that he had with him, and persuaded him to go up with him to Ramoth Gilead. And Ahab king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat king of Judah, wilt thou go with me to Ramoth Gilead? And he answered him, I am as thou art, and my people as thy people, and we will be with thee in the war. And so this was a mistake by King Jehoshaphat. He was not supposed to be going to war with King Ahab. If you keep reading, a little bit before and after this, you'll see that there's a prophet that's sent to Jehoshaphat, where God is telling Jehoshaphat, you are not supposed to go to war. How can you be my servant and then get in alliance with my enemy? He called King Ahab his enemy. That is the problem, one of the main problems with the church world and the church organizations. We have joined alliances with God's enemies. That don't mean that we don't try to get people saved. But we have to be a light. We have to stand apart from the rest of the world. Nowadays, there's no clear line. There used to be, in the old days, there was a clear line. You could see clearly who was the Christian and who was not the Christian. Now those both worlds are so intertwined, you can't tell the difference. Now this morning, I'm not going to get on that too much. I want to talk about the man who had itching ears this morning. This story here is about a man who had itching ears. Now, they both agreed to go to war with one another, that they go to war and try to get Ramoth Gilead back. That was, now we've just read that people heap to themselves teachers because of their own lust. They lost Ramoth Gilead for being disobedient to God. That was God's doing. But King Ahab, after his own lust, wanted to join forces with Jehoshaphat and tried to get Ramoth Gilead back. Ahab was a user. He knew that Jehoshaphat was walking upright with God. He didn't want to walk upright. So he figured, well, if I go get Jehoshaphat, maybe God will be with us. That's the same trick that the devil is using on the church today. People don't want to live right. But they figure, well, if I got friends, you get them calls, well, can you pray for me, brother? God can hear, God really hears your prayer. What I say is you can get in a position where God will hear your prayer. So that's what King Ahab was setting up here. He wanted, after his own lust, he wanted to get Ramoth Gilead back. And he figured, well, if I join forces with Jehoshaphat, somebody that's living right before God, maybe God will grant this. Now let's read verse 4. It says, and Jehoshaphat said unto the king of Israel, inquire, I pray thee, at the word of the Lord today. So Jehoshaphat had sense. Let's just not jump into this thing. Let's go and inquire of the Lord. I wonder how many people live their lives like that. Do we inquire of the Lord before we make a move? I mean, about the smallest things. It could be about buying a car, where the Lord wants you to live. The Lord takes pleasure when his people inquire of him, because we don't ever know what's going to happen down the road. We could be about to buy a house where it's about to flood somewhere and just wipe that house out. Well, if we inquire of the Lord, he'll show us that in advance. Or he'll just say, no, it ain't time yet. So we ought to live our lives where we inquire of the Lord. I mean, about everything. I tell this story just to show you how the Lord cares for us. Because, see, a lot of times we don't think that the Lord cares about the little details. I bought a white van. In fact, I still got it. It was the van that the Lord had showed me in several dreams before I bought it. And when the guy came up to me and told me that I have a white van for sale, he told me he had a van for sale. And I said, what color is it? And he said, it's white. I said, I'll take it. I didn't have to look at it. I knew what it was for. I bought that van, and after a while, the calipers went out on it, and I had to change the calipers. It was right after we had just moved up to Tulsa, not long before then. After that, and we had just had my daughter, my oldest daughter, Taylor. I guess she was about 3 or 4 months old at that time. And so I'm out trying to take them calipers off. And I have a wrench, you know, hooked up to the screw, and I got a pipe on top of that to give me leverage, and I'm out there just hitting that pipe with a hammer, big old sledgehammer. And I'm out there for about 6 or 7 days doing this. And at the time, Taylor was about 4 months old, and I had her, my wife was going to work, and I had her out there with me, you know, out there in the shade with me. And I'm just hitting his hammer, and I mean, for a whole week I did that. I could not get that screw off of there for anything. And I just was ready to give up. I told my wife, if I can't get this screw off today, we're going to sell this van, because it just ain't for us, I guess, you know. So I'm out there hitting it. And finally, something told me. This wasn't just me thinking this up. You've been hitting that screw the wrong way. I was turning it, you know, counterclockwise to turn it, which the way you're supposed to turn a screw. But what I wasn't thinking was I was on the other side of that screw. So that meant I was supposed to turn it clockwise to take it off. Well, something said that just as clear as day. And it also continued to say, you see, I care about every little detail of your life. Well, I dropped that sledgehammer. I ran in the house. I wasn't concerned about the screw at that time. I was just happy that the Lord cared about every little detail of my life. Amen. I could have saved myself a whole week worth of work if I'd inquired of the Lord. After the first day, I couldn't get it off. But that just amazed me, you know, that the Lord cared about me getting that screw off of that van. Amen. Just something, you know, just don't seem significant at all. But the Lord cares about us. So Jehoshaphat had a revelation of that. Verse 4 says, and Jehoshaphat said unto the king of Israel, inquire, I pray thee, at the word of the Lord today. Verse 5 says, therefore the king of Israel gathered together of prophets 400 men, and said unto them, shall we go to Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And they said, go up, for God will deliver it into the king's hands. Now, most ungodly kings had themselves, heaped to themselves, teachers and prophets. 400 prophets, he had all of them saying the same thing. Yeah, go on up. That's what he wanted to hear. And they knew what he wanted to hear. So they were there. All they were there was to help him in his lust. Verse 6 says, but Jehoshaphat said, is there not here a prophet of the Lord besides, that we might inquire of him? Jehoshaphat knew what the deal was. He knew these prophets weren't of God. So he said, okay, I've heard what your prophets have said. But what does God's prophet have to say about it? Verse 7 says, and the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, there is yet one man by whom we may inquire of the Lord, but I hate him. For he never prophesied good unto me, but always evil. The same is Micaiah, the son of Imlah. And Jehoshaphat said, let not the king say so. So this fellow, Ahab, he knew that there was a prophet that could hear from God and that could get him an answer from God. But he didn't want to hear that. You see what I'm saying? He did not want to hear what God had to say. All he wanted was a teacher that was going to tell him exactly what he wanted to hear. And that's the way the people in the church have become. They don't want to hear the truth. That stuff that Brother Junior was teaching on Tuesday and Friday, most of the church world can't stand that. They get up and walk out on you. But those type of things need to be taught on, because that's the only way the church is going to grow. So King Ahab says, yeah, there's one man that we can inquire of, but I hate him because he never prophesied good unto me. Now, isn't this something? Ahab knew that he was wicked, but he still expected the prophet of God to prophesy good unto him. People sitting in church know what kind of dirt they living in, but they still expect good prophecies to come forth. God ain't gonna never pat you on the back as long as there's mess in your life. And it's not that God hates you, or it's not that you know the people that's preaching hate you. It's because The Lord wants us to reach our full potential. And the only way we can reach our full potential is by somebody standing up and telling us the truth. Verse 8 says, and the king of Israel called for one of his officers and said, fetch quickly Micaiah the son of Imlah. And the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat king of Judah sat either of them on his throne, clothed in their robes, and they sat in a broad place at the entering in of the gate of Samaria. And all the prophets prophesied before them. And Zedekiah the son of Shenanah had made him horns of iron, and said, thus said the Lord, with these thou shalt push Syria until they be consumed. And all the prophets prophesied so, saying, go up to Ramoth Gilead and prosper, for the Lord shall deliver it into the hand of the king. So they done heard what they wanted to hear. King Ahab done heard the word that he wanted to hear. Go up and prosper, for the Lord will deliver it unto thee. Now let's read verse 12. And the messenger that went to call Micaiah spake to him, saying, behold, the words of the prophets declare good to the king with one assent. Let thy word, therefore, I pray thee, be like one of theirs, and speak thou good. Now this is what I call one of those secret meetings. If you're a preacher, I'm sure Brother Junior can tell you about them. When the Lord might send you into a church, or people might ask you to speak in a church, and you might be there for a while. Then they want to call a meeting and say, well, this is what we preach here. This is how we believe. You get that in a hurry. This is how we believe. In other words, don't preach nothing else but what we believe. Don't matter what the words say. They want to hear what they traditions, what mom and daddy and grandpa been doing their whole lives. So this is the kind of meeting that this messenger is with Micaiah saying, hey, all other prophets, there's 400 of them now. All of them said, go up and prosper. See, and they tried to intimidate Micaiah. Everybody else is saying this. Now what you gonna say? You know, they find strength in numbers. That's why it's got so many organizations and all of them, and they have this big meeting and they decide what they're gonna do, because they feel like it's strength in numbers. But if God ain't with it, then if God is not with your particular program, then there's no strength in you. Regardless of how many churches are going after this or that, if God ain't with it, it's not going to stand. And I like what Micaiah said. Verse 13 says, and Micaiah said, as the Lord liveth, even what my God said, that will I speak. You know, boy, people don't like this. Church leaders don't like that. They don't want to hear that. They call you arrogant. Who are you to be going against the grain? But Micaiah had a commission. Now I want you to see something here. Micaiah was minding his own business. He wasn't bothering them folks. God didn't send him to them people. God had already shown him what was taking place. But he wasn't bothering them. He was sitting off to himself, just minding his business. They sent for Micaiah. A lot of times, I'm talking to preachers and future preachers that sit in here. A lot of times people will call you to come to them and help them bring the gospel. But they already got their mind made up what they want to believe. When I go to different churches, you know, like I just come out of a church over in Oklahoma, I don't unpack my bags. God know I ain't gonna be there too long. I just keep my bags packed. Because I know no matter how people smile at you and they hug you and tell you they love you, in the back of their mind, they already got their mind made up. Verse 14 says, and when he was come to the king said unto him, Micaiah, shall we go up to Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And he said, go ye up and prosper, and they shall be delivered into your hand. Now, what I want you to see is King Ahab is asking him this. Shall we go up to Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? Now, he already got his mind made up. He could care less what Micaiah is about to say. When preachers stand before people to preach, most of the time they already got their mind made up. They look like they taking it, but they already got their mind made up. So he's kind of asking them, shall I go up and forbear? Shall I go up and to Ramoth Gilead, or shall I forbear? It don't matter what Micaiah is about to say. All he got on his mind is, well, I don't care what he say. I'm gonna do what I want to do. I got 400 people that's already told me what I. Now, back in these days, the kings, if you were a prophet of God and you was in a king's court, a lot of times they would have you killed if you didn't prophesy what they wanted you to hear, what they wanted to hear. And so the prophets of God most of the time are off to themselves, you know, and not in the king's court. Because and I want you to think about this. This is a man who had, when the prophets of God went before the kings, they knew that their life was at stake. They knew that man could have them killed, but they still had to speak the truth. Verse 14 says, and when he was come to the king said unto him, Micaiah, shall we go to Ramoth Gilead to battle, or shall I forbear? And he said, go ye up and prosper, and they shall be delivered into your hand. Verse 15 says, and the king said to him, how many times shall I adjure thee, that thou say nothing but the truth to me in the name of the Lord? So deep down inside, King Ahab knew that was not the will of the Lord. If he didn't know that, he wouldn't have said, when Micaiah answered him the way he did, he wouldn't have said, how many times do I have to ask you? Just tell me the truth. He knew deep down inside that was not the will of the Lord for him to go to Ramoth Gilead. Verse 16 says, then he said, I did see all Israel scattered upon the mountains as sheep that had no shepherd. Now the shepherd back in the Old Testament mostly were kings. And the Lord said, these have no master. Let them return, therefore, every man to his house in peace. And the king of Israel said to Jehoshaphat, did I not tell thee that he would not prophesy good unto me, but evil? And you see, that's now he knew. King Ahab knew that this was the word of the Lord that Micaiah had just said. But he's still telling Jehoshaphat, now didn't I tell you this fella ain't got nothing good to say to me? It wasn't him, it was the Lord. So he wasn't rejecting the prophet of God, he was rejecting God. Verse 18 says, again he said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting upon his throne, and all the host of heaven standing on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who shall entice Ahab, king of Israel, that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one spake, saying after this manner, and another saying after that manner. Now I want you to see, the Lord already knew King Ahab's heart. He already knew that he was going to try to go against something that he had ordained. Amen. And so I'll tell you what, let's go to 2 Thessalonians. Hold your spot there. Go to 2 Thessalonians in the 2nd chapter. Second Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter. It's right before 1 Timothy. When you have it, say amen. We'll start reading at verse 7. It says, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work, only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan, with all power and signs and lying wonders, and with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in them that perish, because they receive not the love of the truth, that they might be saved. So that was King Ahab's problem. He had received the truth, but he heard the truth, but he didn't receive it. All he wanted to hear was what he wanted to hear. That's why whenever Jesus said something real profound, he always said, him that has an ear, let him hear. Because he knew most of the people in the crowd didn't have an ear to hear it. What is it? It's those itching ears. Verse 11 says, and for this cause, who shall send them strong delusion? Who? That they should believe a lie, that they all might be damned who believe not the truth, but had pleasure in unrighteousness. So that's the danger of rejecting the word of God, of rejecting the truth. When you reject the truth, God sends you strong delusion. Not only to believe a lie, but you'll be damned by that same lie that you believe. That's what happened to King Ahab. Let's go back to 2 Chronicles now. Read at verse 18. It says, again he said, therefore hear the word of the Lord. I saw the Lord sitting upon his throne, and all the host of heaven standing on his right hand and on his left. And the Lord said, who shall entice Ahab, king of Israel, that he may go up and fall at Ramoth Gilead? And one spake, saying after this manner, and another saying after that manner. Then there came out a spirit and stood before the Lord, and said, I will entice him. And the Lord said unto him, wherewith? In other words, how will you do it? Verse 21 says, and he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all his prophets. And that's what's done happened in a lot of these church organizations. Some angel had went out and become a lying spirit in the mouth of all of these prophets and pastors and teachers, telling people what they want to hear. Because the danger of rejecting the truth is, this is what happens when you reject the truth. The Lord will help you believe a lie you've been believing all along. That's a bad situation to be found in, when the Lord helping you to believe a lie. We read verse 21 again. It says, and he said, I will go out and be a lying spirit in the mouth of all of his prophets. And the Lord said, thou shalt entice him, and thou shalt also prevail. Go out and do even so. So this is what have happened. Let's go to, hold your place there. Let's go to the 30th chapter of Isaiah. The 30th chapter of Isaiah. This is where most religious folks have gotten. When I was 12 years old and the Lord had told me to start preaching, he showed me a vision. I was standing in the pulpit, and I wasn't saying anything. I was just standing here. And he said, don't be afraid, because I'm with you. I knew from that point on, from him saying that, be not afraid. What do I have to be afraid of? Other preachers ain't got to worry about getting stoned and getting, and getting talked about and, being afraid of the people. So what do I have to be afraid of? And it wasn't until some years later I found out what. Because people do not want the truth. They do not want the truth. They don't care about the truth. All they care about is carrying on with the same program they've been carrying on with. And God forbid you come in there and disturb their little program that they got going on. Let's start reading at verse 8. It says, now go, write it before them in a table, and note it in a book, that it may be for the time to come forever and ever. That this is a rebellious people, lying children, children that will not hear the law of the Lord, which say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits. That's what people are doing today. We don't want to hear that. All we want to hear is that we're okay. The Lord loves us just the way we are. Come as you. You know the song says, come as you are. I'm going to read verse 10 again. It says, which say to the seers, see not, and to the prophets, prophesy not unto us right things, speak unto us smooth things, prophesy deceits. Get you out of the way. Turn aside out of the path. Cause the Holy One of Israel to cease from before us. So they don't want to have, people don't want to have anything to do with God, except for what he can do for them. They don't want to hear that you got to live holy and you got to live right. They don't want to hear that all lives will have their part in the lake of fire. They don't want to hear anything like that. All they want to hear is, brother, you okay. The Lord loves you. He know how you are. Look at your childhood. You had a rough childhood. I never understood how people make excuses like that. I don't want people, you know, and some of these preachers, they'll pat you on your back all the way to the lake of fire. I was thinking this morning, you know, our own brother Junior, people in this city know him. They know he gonna speak the truth. And I'm quite sure that, you know, they might have figured out, well, you know, he getting up there in age. We ain't got too much longer to, you know, have to worry about him preaching what he preaching. Then the Lord sent somebody else. Brother Junior got over 50 years of preaching the truth. But right when people think that he's on his last leg, the Lord sends somebody else. Now we tag teaming. The Lord really got 50 more years. When I get on my last leg, then the Lord will raise somebody else up. Because as long as there are people that want to hear the truth, the Lord will have somebody that'll preach it to them. So it ain't gonna, the truth ain't gonna never stop. It ain't gonna, now I ain't, you know, I'm not bragging or anything, but I've been around the world and I've heard all kind of preaching. And it ain't, you don't get too much truth out there. You don't, it just, that's just too far in between. Now there are other preachers that are preaching the truth, but they're so far in between, you know, it's hard to find them little churches where the truth is being preached. Most times, just find a little building like this one, you know, where ain't very many people going. You know, you halfway there then. But it ain't too many people, ain't too many churches where the truth is being preached. All right, let's go on back over to 2 Chronicles. Verse 22 says, Now therefore, behold, the Lord hath put a lying spirit in the mouth of these thy prophets, and the Lord hath spoken evil against thee. Then Zedekiah, the son of Kenana, came near and smote Micaiah upon the cheek and said, Which way went the Spirit of the Lord from me to speak unto thee? So now they done got bold and arrogant. They know he done spoke the word of the Lord. And he think that he's doing that to this prophet. He's really doing it to the Lord. When Paul was out persecuting the church, when Jesus stopped him in his tracks, he didn't say, Why are you messing with my people? He said, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Because when you're messing with God's people, you ain't messing with God's people. You messing with him. And Micaiah said, Behold, thou shalt see on that day when thou shalt go into an inner chamber and to hide thyself. Then the king of Israel said, Take ye Micaiah and carry him back to Ammon, the governor of the city, and to Joash, the king's son, and say, Thus said the king, Put this fellow into prison, and feed him with bread of affliction and with water of affliction until I return in peace. And Micaiah said, If thou certainly return in peace, then hath not the Lord spoken by me. And he said, Hearken, all ye people. And so, instead of King Ahab hearkening unto the Lord, now King Ahab done already been through several things with the prophet Elijah. He know that when the Lord say something, he can count on it. That's the, you know, it's gonna come to pass. But instead of him turning away from what he had set in his mind, he would rather punish the man of God for telling him the truth. And that's the way people are today. They don't want to come out of what they in. For some reason, they feel like I can make my own world. I'm my own person. I can do it my way. And when somebody comes saying anything different, then we'll just get somebody else that's going to tell us what we want to hear. Verse 28 says, So the king of Israel and Jehoshaphat, the king of Judah, went up to Ramoth Gilead. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, I will disguise myself and will go to the battle. I want you to catch what's going on in this verse here. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, I will disguise myself and will go to the battle. In other words, he putting on regular clothes. He not putting on his kingly attire. He's trying to hide himself. Now, if he really felt like he was right in what he was doing, he wouldn't have had to do that. If God was with him, he could have been out there in his regular clothes and God would have been with him. He wouldn't have had to worry about dying. But I want you to see what happens when the children of God make an alliance with unholiness. How they do you. Let's read the second part of that verse. Let me read it all over again. And the king of Israel said unto Jehoshaphat, I will disguise myself and will go to the battle. But put thou on thy robes. So the king of Israel disguised himself and they went to the battle. What was he doing? Why did he want to put on regular fighting clothes and he wanted Jehoshaphat to put on his robe? Because he wanted him to take his place. He wanted them. Let's keep reading. Verse 30 says, Now the king of Syria had commanded the captains of the chariots that were with him, saying, Fight ye not with small or great, save only with the king of Israel. And it came to pass, when the captains of the chariots saw Jehoshaphat, that they said, It is the king of Israel. Therefore they compassed about him to fight. But Jehoshaphat cried out, and the Lord helped him, and God moved them to depart from him. That's what King Ahab up his sleeve all along. He knew, well, as soon as they see somebody in a kingly robe, they're going to figure it's me. And then they're going to kill him, and they're going to think that they done got me. But the Bible says Jehoshaphat cried out, and the Lord helped him. Why? Because Jehoshaphat was righteous. He was wrong in making an alliance. It almost got him killed. If we don't watch it, the people we hanging around and got those unholy alliances with, they'll get us killed. Verse 32 says, For it came to pass that when the captains of the chariots perceived that it was not the king of Israel, they turned back again from pursuing him. And a certain man drew a bow at a venture, and smote the king of Israel between the joints of the harness. Therefore he said to his chariot men, Turn thine hand, that thou mayest carry me out of the host, for I am wounded. And the battle increased that day. Howbeit the king of Israel stayed himself up in his chariot against the Syrians until the even. And about the time of the sun going down, he died. That's the ultimate result. That's what's going to happen at the end of people following their own way. That's what happens with people that have itching ears. The way that they follow and have death on the end of it. You see? And so because of his itching ears, in other words, because he wanted to hear what he wanted to hear and didn't want to hear what God had to say about the situation, he died. That's what's going to happen to us if we don't get rid of these itching ears. We have to learn to follow the truth. And not only when we hear the truth, we have to learn not to be bitter against it. The stuff that Brother Junior was preaching on Tuesday and Friday, I wasn't here on Tuesday, but I was here on Friday. That's the kind of stuff that we have to grow by. And if you don't watch it, you'll be sitting there getting bitter thinking, I know he up there talking about me. Somebody done told him something. When all along it's the Lord. The Lord knows what you're doing in your house. Up there cussing him out in your mind, saying, well, somebody done told him something. That I hate coming. He always, that people say the same thing that they said that Ahab said to Jehoshaphat. He ain't never got nothing good to say. All he do is prophesy to me evil. But if he'd have stopped doing evil, God would have stopped prophesying to him evil. Well, that's all I have for this morning. Virginia, you got anything you want to add? Well.